For anyone that knows me or has had me before as a teacher, they'll likely have heard my lecture on poetry or some variation of it before. Poetry is like looking at a magic eye poster. The longer you stare at it, the more you relax your eyes and the harder you focus past the text instead of directly at it, the more likely you'll see the hidden meanings reveal themselves to you.
Yeah, it's 3D art. Computers generate them. Big computers. Well, you blur your eyes like you're staring straight through the picture, and you keep your eyes unfocused.
I usually follow that lesson with an attempt to let my students try to see a variety of pre-prepared images, and then I stand back in secret delight as they struggle trying to see the image.
I don't see it. It's a spaceship surrounded by planets, asteroids.
If you've never heard of this, check out the link in the description for this video for an excellent explanation of how this works. More importantly, the metaphor applies well for those struggling with understanding poetry because it connects on so many levels.
Oh, yeah!
You can't always focus on just the words. It takes practice and repeated exposure. You have to be patient and relax. And you have to know what you're looking for. I hope I haven't lost too many viewers already at hearing the word poetry.
Run away! Run away! Run away!
Keep watching, I'm going somewhere with this. For years, I have always been drawn to poetry about nature. And I always loved reading people's attempts to write about something so incredible and inspiring, to try to capture the feeling that I get when I go into nature. It is only recently that I've made the connection as to why. All of the same things I explained in the magic eye metaphor apply to understanding nature as well. Like poetry and the digital images, if all you look at are the words or the literal images, you'll have a fairly straightforward experience. I went for a walk, it was nice, the sun was warm, stuff like that. But if you approach nature like you approach poetry or the magic eye pictures, you have an entirely different experience. You will learn things that you couldn't otherwise learn. My discovery of this concept hasn't happened overnight. It has taken decades of outdoor exposure, frequent failed attempts, but many deeply personal and profound experiences. And more recently, I've been sharing those experiences through my videos. I realized that this perspective was beginning to sound a lot like a First Nations perspective. In a recent call I had with John Chiefcalf, who is the First Nations Métis and Inuit coordinator for our school division, he helped me to see something I was missing.
The mind shift begins to occur. What is actually nature teaching us?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at, so the thinking is that nature is a very circular system. It's not a hierarchy system. It's a very cooperative system.
Yeah.
So then what's your visual evidence in that process? So the visual evidence in nature would be, well, the sun is round, stars are round, the moon is round, the earth is round, trees are round, nests are round, rivers have semicircles. You have all the evidence that indicates that everything is round: rocks, spider webs, ant hills. So what is nature teaching indigenous perspective? That life is cyclical. So rain hits the ground, evaporation goes back up, moves to a different direction, rain comes back down. Right. Rainbow is semicircle, right? So what is the visual evidence that things are circular? And what is the visual evidence that everything is cooperative? Right. Well, you see birds flying in groups. You see deers in groups of two or group packs. If you see an animal by itself, it's usually hunting. So when you think about it in a different sense, a lot of indigenous knowledge is about relationships. It is about balance, the pursuit of balance. Nature is unpredictable. It's unfair. It could change on a dime, but it's also beautiful. It's also comforting. And the idea is that if you work with nature, then you can learn a lot from it. And really trying to listen really what nature is saying. So nature introduces itself as words, right? So all of a sudden we're walking and then boom, there's a deer. what's the name for deer? Well, awakas, right? A bald eagle flies by, and then, what's the name for that? Or what's the name for the river? Nit, right? So again, all of those things is what we did. And then now what it does is that it creates an inquiry. Again, we're not talking about ceremony, we're not talking about sweats or anything, we're just talking about language.
Yeah.
And the perception of language. And then, what is your connection to nature?
Among several things I learned in my phone call with John, I realized that I've often looked at nature as a topic, like something to discuss, or a theme for an adventure or for writing. I'd never looked at it directly as a teacher. To take this even further, I had never realized that while yes, poetry can be about nature, the more obvious conclusion was staring me right in the face all along. Poetry can always be about nature, but nature is poetry. In William Wordsworth's famous Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey poem, he writes about a nostalgic scene that he revisits later with new wisdom and understanding. Without getting too bogged down in the details, he comes to the conclusion, referring to what he felt in the past, that he cannot paint what then he was, that time is past. He realizes that he has a new perspective now and makes this declaration: "For I have learned to look on nature, not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still sad music of humanity, nor harsh nor grating, though of ample power to chasten and subdue." To chasten and subdue. To chasten, meaning to rebuke, to humble, to make one teachable, and subdue, to conquer, overcome, or quiet. In many ways, that accurately describes the effect that nature has had on me. It puts me in my place, humbles me, quiets the noise in my head, and once I am ready, teaches me the still, sad music of humanity. As Wordsworth later declares, nature, in the language of the sense, is the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul, of all my moral being. With this different perspective of nature as my guide and teacher, I look forward to approaching my outdoor experience differently. Rather than go into nature looking for something to find or trying to see something in particular, I plan to go there as a student, with no expectations other than to be taught. And as John Chiefcalf says, to listen to what nature is saying. Thank you so much for watching this week. Next week there won't be a video, but stay tuned. I've got a really cool idea that I'm exploring and I'm so excited to share it. Until then, take care, get outside, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.